Hey, Johns Creek, it's Sergeant Deb. We are here at our banquet, and we are getting ready to start the awards. And I wanted to live stream the life-saving awards.
I'm going to start out this evening because of the number of them, but I'm going to start out with the life-saving award for the department. And I will tell you that there's several this year that are receiving their life-saving award, which if you think about it, there's 8 of these awards to give out tonight. Now, some of them are doubled up, but that's going to tell you that there's at least a dozen people that are alive today because of the actions that these officers took during the course of the year. And I, for one, just find that absolutely outstanding. First one, in no particular order, is going to go to Officer Coe and Officer Johnson. On June 1st, 2016, at 15:04 hours, both these officers responded to an erratic driver traveling westbound on State Bridge. The information from Chatcom indicated that the driver of the vehicle was in distress and appeared to be having medical issues. Officer Coe located the vehicle as it slowly moved westbound on State Bridge Road. Officer Coe also observed another unmale running beside the car trying to stop the vehicle and assist the driver. Officer Coe, while operating his motorcycle, stopped the motorcycle and ran across the median to the vehicle, which was still moving. He observed the driver shaking violently and appeared incoherent. Several attempts were made by Officer Coe to contact the citizen with no success. Officer Coe then struck the driver's window with his ass baton, and the driver then stopped the vehicle. However, the driver was still unable to unlock the doors and was still in medical distress. Officer Coe then broke out the rear window with his ass baton and was able to unlock the doors. At that time, Officer Mark Johnson arrived and was able to enter through the passenger side and pull the vehicle into park. Both officers were then able to spoke to the driver and learn that he was suffering a medical injury and were able to start first aid while Johns Creek Fire Department and Metro Ambulance arrived and took over patient care. He was then transported to Emory-Johns Creek Hospital. Officer Coe and Johnson's actions saved the life of that motorist that day. Thank you. The next we have is Sergeant Zeppelin and Officer DeServo. On May 7, 2016, these officers were dispatched to an overdose call at a known location. Dispatch advised that the individual was unconscious and not breathing and was already turning blue. They further advised that CPR was already in progress. Their rapid response and quick actions that day were able to save the lives of this victim. As both officers arrived on the scene, they had their medical bags with them and located the victim upstairs in the bathroom floor. A relative at this time was administering CPR. They confirmed that the victim had no pulse and was not breathing. The victim was then placed in a safe position and held in place as Sergeant Zebley administered the Narcan. The victim gasped for air a short time later and then started to go into unconscious again. Sergeant Zebley then administered another injection into the victim's thigh, this time reviving him. As a precaution, the AED pads were then placed on him and intended to reshock, but at that time EMS and fire arrived on scene and took over medical treatment. The victim had an extensive history of heroin overdose and abuse, but with those actions he was saved that day. Sergeant Zebley.
Turn around.
next one is going to be Officer Goins and Officer Flora. On August 6, 2016, they responded to an address in reference to a medical call involving a 57-year-old male that had possibly overdosed on a drug and was currently unconscious. Upon arrival, the officers quickly evaluated the patient and received further information from family members that he was possibly suffering from a heroin overdose. Officer Goins prepared and administered a Nexlon auto-injector, which had positive results until EMS and JFC arrived at the scene to take over patient care. He was then transported to the hospital for overdose and then regained consciousness at the hospital. Officers Goins and Flora. Well done. This officer is not here tonight, but nonetheless, he was receiving a life-saving award. This goes to Officer George Hodge. On November 1st, 2016, at approximately 14:07 hours, a medical call was dispatched in reference to a male down and unconscious and not breathing, with CPR in progress by a bystander at the Dollar Tree store. When the call was dispatched, Officer Hodge was working an active traffic complaint in the area and was closest unit to the incident. He immediately responded to the incident location. While Officer Hodge was entering the store, he observed a male lying on his back with blood coming from his mouth and another female giving chest compressions. Officer Hodge opened his issued AED and placed the AED pads on the victim, and a shock was advised and administered. After the shock, Officer Hodge took over the chest compressions from the female, and Officer Hodge continued the chest compressions until the victim began to breathe but remained unconscious. Upon arrival, the Johns Creek Fire and Rescue personnel took over patient care, transported the patient to the hospital, and he successfully revived him at the hospital. This next one is from Officer Francis and Corporal Russo, who's now Sergeant Russo, but Officer Francis isn't with us. On Friday, December 11th, C-Squad units were dispatched to an address in reference to a possible drug overdose. Sergeant Russo and Officer Francis were the first on the scene, located two individuals in the basement of the home that had apparently overdosed from heroin. The female and the male were unresponsive. The mother advised that she was a registered nurse and had begun CPR on the patient. Sergeant Russo took over chest compressions while Officer Francis prepared an auto-injector to counteract the overdose. Shortly after a second injector was administered and following a brief period of chest compressions, he regained consciousness. However, his level was continued to fall in and out of consciousness, and JFD arrived along with RMA and took over patient care and transported the person to the hospital. Sergeant Russo. I don't think so. This is going to take a short minute to read an email I got from a citizen in reference to Sergeant Russo. And I chose this one just to share, but I think it speaks volumes about the officers we have. There's several that I had. This one just kind of hit the nail on the head of several that I get. On September this past year, I received a telephone call from a citizen in reference to Sergeant Russo. He responded last night to the address, and she went on to state that her husband had passed out and had stopped breathing while they were eating dinner. Her two children were present. One is 6, the other is 2. Both children were extremely frightened while waiting for help to arrive. When help did arrive, they began taking care of my husband. However, when Sergeant Russo arrived, he helped me in a different way. He could see that the children were upset, so he held and comforted them while EMS was taking care of their father. She explained that Sergeant Russo stayed with the children, talking to them, hugging them, and long after her husband was transported to the hospital, when he returned from the hospital late that night, she found toys on the porch for the children. There was just a note on it that said it was from the Johns Creek Police Department, but she stated that she knows the toys were from Sergeant Russo, but he was much too humble to take credit to buying the toys with his own money. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the kind of caliber officers that we have. Please give him a